Most people heard about this group under different names: the Tuskegee Airmen, the Red Tails. They were the first African-American pilots in the U.S. Armed Forces. Their performance and struggles paved the way for many more that came after them. So, let's see their history, how they were trained at the Tuskegee Institute, and how they performed in their duties. Ever since aircrafts were in use, there were African-American men and women who were looking for a way to get into aviation. As early as in World War I, black men tried to become involved in aviation as aerial observers, but they couldn't, as the Army Air Corps, the predecessor of the Air Force, restricted African Americans from joining. It was widely accepted at that time that black men are not smart enough to operate complicated machinery like an aircraft. The Army War College created a study in 1925, which by today's standards was quite revolting and was less of a study, more like a list of the views and beliefs of the white community towards black people at that time. After the First World War ended, these restrictions stayed in place for more than 2 decades, despite the growing voices against them, and not just in the black communities. The government only started to ease the restrictions on the eve of World War II because of the growing pressure, first with the Civilian Pilot Training Act in 1939, which opened up the pilot training to anyone who qualifies. The Tuskegee Institute applied for training civilian pilots at the end of 1939. About a year after the institution was approved for the pilot training program, on the 16th of September 1940, the Congress passed the Selective Service Act, which stated that every armed service needs to enlist black people. On the same day, the War Department announced that the CAA, Civil Aeronautics Authority, will start training colored personnel in cooperation with the U.S. Army. The requirements for the candidates were extremely strict and included mental and physical exams. Some said the experiment was designed to fail, as they asked more from the black candidates than the Army normally asked from people joining the pilot training programs. In the end, this brought the result that only the brightest, highly educated, and physically fit men made it into the program. As Second Lieutenant Coleman Young put it, they made the standards so high, we actually became an elite group. In general, the training took longer and the exams were harder for these men than they would have been normally for a flight training candidate. Not everyone made it, but a lot of them did, and proved themselves capable of mastering anything that just a few years before was considered impossible for them. In January 1941, the War Department announced plans for an all-black fighter squadron, and soon after in that year, the 99th Pursuit Squadron was activated and transferred to Tuskegee. But it still didn't have pilots, as the airmen were still in training. But after they finished the training, the officers were left idle at Tuskegee, as the Air Corps would not use black officers to command white enlisted men. One of the most prominent figures between these men was Benjamin O. Davis Jr., the son of a black U.S. Army officer. He graduated at West Point in 1936 and was only the 4th black graduate of the academy. He applied to the Army Air Corps, but they rejected him at that time, as the Army Air Corps back then didn't accept African Americans to the service. Later, he was assigned to the Tuskegee Institute to teach military tactics, and there he entered the aviation cadet training in 1941 and graduated in 1942. In the same year, he was promoted to lieutenant colonel and became the commander of the all-black 99th Squadron, and later commanded the 332nd Flight Group. He was an example for many of the men applying for the flight training. He retired in 1970 and was the first black brigadier general of the U.S. Army. In 1998, he was promoted to 4-star general, though the Army was still hesitant to send the 99th into combat. By 1943, this changed, and a big part of this was thanks to the First Lady of the U.S. Eleanor Roosevelt visited the squadron in that year and flew with a black pilot. Later, she helped convince the president to finally send the unit into action. So finally, in April 1943, the 99th was considered combat ready and shipped out to North Africa equipped with P-40 fighter planes. They flew their first combat mission in June the same year, and later they moved to Sicily after the Allied invasion of the island. Not long after, attempts were made to prevent the black pilots from flying combat missions, several officers stating that the 99th performed poorly and should be removed from combat. Colonel Davis, who at that time was ordered back to the States to take command of the 332nd Fighter Group, defended his men and presented his case to the War Department. A study was ordered to evaluate the performance of the 99th Fighter Squadron, which eventually found that their performance was comparable to any other fighter groups. The 332nd Fighter Group, under the command of Colonel Davis, was sent to Europe in February 1944, consisting of the 100th, the 301st, and 302nd Fighter Squadrons, and later in May, the 99th was assigned to the group as well. Stationed at Ramitelli Airfield, the group escorted B-24 and B-17 bombers on their missions over Hungary, Austria, Poland, and Germany. The initial P-40 and P-39 fighters of the 99th and 332nd were swapped for P-47 Thunderbolts, and later, from July 1944, the group converted to fly P-51 Mustangs. They built an impressive record-flying escort for the bomber formations, though the statement that they never lost a bomber turned out to be a myth. The nickname Red Tails came after the group decided to paint the rudders of their planes bright red color, partly for easier identification in fights, and partly to distinguish themselves from other fighter groups. Between 1941 and 1946, almost 1,000 pilots were trained at the Tuskegee Institute, and a total of 84 of them lost their lives in the war. The Tuskegee Airmen flew 1,575 combat missions and 179 bomber escort missions. They destroyed or damaged more than 400 enemy aircraft, including 3 Me-262 jet fighters. The units received 3 Distinguished Unit citations, and between their members received 96 Distinguished Flying Crosses, 14 Bronze Stars, 744 Air Medals, and 60 Purple Hearts. The training program at Tuskegee was expanded late in the war and began training bomber pilots as well. The graduates of this program became part of the 477th Bombardment Group, but the war ended before they could deploy overseas and see combat. The Tuskegee Airmen did a lot to show how black pilots could do just as well as any other, and had a great combat record during World War II. But they still had to endure the segregation in the military for years after the war. Nonetheless, they made a difference, and as experienced combat pilots, were a great asset in the Air Force. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please leave a like, subscribe to my channel Raw African Legacy, and in the comments let me know if there's any interesting events or vehicles you'd like to see.